Pranam to Professor Thanu Padmanabhan, who breathed his last on 17 September morning. In fact, it is a big loss to the entire scientific community in the country. He is such a legendary personality, one of the promising scientists of the country, world-renowned theoretical physicist and cosmologist. KCST is organizing 1 week-long commemorative webinar series to pay homage to Professor Thanu Padmanabhan, and the webinar series is organized in association with Kerala University, MG University, Cochin University of Science and Technology, and University of Calicut. This program is hopefully attended by faculty members, researchers, and students from colleges and schools, and also scientists from R&D institutions. Today, it is the 4th day of the webinar series, which starts with a welcome note by Dr. E.S. Anil Kumar. He is the senior level scientist in KSCSTE, and the state level program is presided over by Professor M.K. Jayaraj, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Calicut University. The memorial lecture is delivered by a distinguished scientist, Dr. Anil Bharadwaj, who is at present Director of Physical Research Laboratory under Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, Ahmedabad, which will be followed by vote of thanks by Dr. C.D. Ravikumar, who is the Head of Department of Physics, University of Calicut. Today, this program is blessed by the gracious presence of Padma Shri M.C. Dattan, Professor C.P. Aravindakshan, Professor Unnikrishnan Nair, Dr. Kalyan Chakravarti, who is Director of Kerala School of Mathematics, and so many other eminent scientists. Now, may I request Dr. E.S. Anil Kumar to start the program and welcome the participants, please.
Good afternoon, respected dignitaries, dear colleagues, teachers, and students. Welcome to the commemorative webinar series jointly organized by KSCST and 4 universities of Kerala State in order to pay tribute to Professor Thanu Padmanabhan, a renowned theoretical physicist and cosmologist of our country. Professor Thanu Padmanabhan was closely associated with KSCST from the inception of Council. He was a gifted science communicator, and his masterful contribution to cosmology and astrophysics will be long remembered. His sad demise is a big loss to the whole scientific community. Respected President of today's meeting is Professor M.K. Jayaraj, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of University of Calicut. Professor Jayaraj received the MSc and PhD in Physics from CUSAT. His specialization and research focus is in the area of optoelectronics, materials, and devices. Recent research interests include nanostructured devices, transparent electronics, ferroelectric thin films, laser, and RF plasma studies. In spite of his busy schedule, he has agreed to chair this meeting. On behalf of, I welcome you, sir, to this meeting.
Thank you.
Today's invited speaker for the commemorative webinar series is Dr. Anil Bharadwaj, sir, Director, Physical Research Laboratory, ISRO, Ahmedabad. He has kindly accepted our invitation to deliver the commemorative lecture today. On behalf of KSCST, it is my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to you, sir. I also welcome respected Member Secretary, Dr. S. Pradeep Kumar, sir, respected Dr. M.C. Dattan, sir, former Director of PSSC and Mentor Science, Government of Kerala, Professor C.D. Ravikumar, Head of the Department of Physics, University of Calicut, Dr. Ajit Prabhu, Chief Scientist and Coordinator of this program, Dr. Harinarayanan, Co-Convener of this program. Other senior professors, dear colleagues, scientists from R&D centers, teachers, and students. Once again, I welcome you all to this commemorative lecture session. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. Now, may I request Professor M.K. Jayaraj, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Calicut University, for his presidential address. Sir, please.
Good afternoon. Dr. Anil Bharadwaj, Director of Physical Research Laboratory. Dr. E.S. Anil Kumar, Senior Scientist. Dr. C.D. Ravi Kumar. Dr. Ajit Prabhu, Dr. Sri Dattan, Professor Unnikrishnan, other distinguished colleagues, senior professors and friends. Pranam to Professor Thanu Padmanabhan. Kerala State Council for Science and Technology and Environment, in association with the Universities of Kerala, is organizing a week-long commemorative webinar series, a tribute to Professor Thanu Padmanabhan. It's very appropriate that Kerala State Council for Science, Technology and Environment took initiative to organize this tribute, remembering Professor Thanu Padmanabhan, and each one of us being comforted and consoled. The untimely death of Padma Shri Thanu Padmanabhan is hard to believe, and everyone is in the process of feeling comforted, coming to terms with the great loss, and finding ways to adapt. Professor Thanu Padmanabhan, affectionately known to his friends and colleagues as Paddy, born in 1957, who did his graduation and post-graduation from University College, Kerala University, winning gold medals in both for topping the university. His brilliance in theoretical physics was evident at a very young age of 20, while he was doing his bachelor's, when he published his first research paper in General Relativity, published in the Indian journal Pramana. Some minds are so exceptional, they change the world. We don't know exactly why these people soar above the rest of us. But the answer to this is there in Professor Padmanabhan's words. Excellence is non-negotiable. It is true there is no shortcut to excellence, and he has proved it. He lived as an example. I was fortunate to attend some of his lectures during his visit to Kerala, especially to Cochin University of Science and Technology, and also when we were organized, an Academy of Physics teachers organized some workshop. He was a resource person. Of course, there are numerous lectures by Professor Thanu Padmanabhan in YouTube and digital platforms, which he gave in different institutes. Being myself as a physicist, we all loved to listen to him. Professor Padmanabhan's ability to explain abstract physics concepts for a lay person is something commendable. While in class, we were all amazed by his ability to write in the board with both left and right hands. With both hands, he did it with the same ease, with the same clarity. The use of Blackboard, the Blackboard management in the classroom by Professor Thanu Padmanabhan is very exceptional, and that is something all the teachers wanted to mimic. His frequent visit to Kerala motivated many Keralites to take up a career in the field of astrophysics and cosmology. And many universities have built a good relationship with IUCAA Pune because of his frequent visits to Kerala. Now we can see there are many IUCAA associates in all the universities in Kerala because he has motivated many youngsters to take up the astrophysics and cosmology. Maybe the first time in India, a cartoonist wrote an obituary on death of a scientist. Mr. A.P. Unni wrote an obituary about Professor Patnaban. Professor Patnaban, along with Kate Francis and Avinash Pandey, they were the illustrated, wrote the story of physics, a comic strip, the story of physics, serialized in the magazine Science Age, and which is published by the Vigyan Prasad. Now it is translated into several Indian languages. He was also interested in science puzzles. Recently, Tanu Patnaban, chosen for the Kerala Shastra Puraskaram 2021 by the State Council for Science and Technology and Environment, and an article appeared in Madhubhumi, gave him a celebrity status, and even layman could recognize his contribution now. And after 1 week, it was very unfortunate that untimely death of Professor Tanu Patnaban made many of the people who especially working in the scientific field a loss of a fatherly figure. We all were looking for advice from him. Someone was mentioning the work of Patnaban on gravity as a third revolution. In the 17th century, Newton concluded that objects fall because of they are pulled by the Earth's gravity. Then the Einstein's general theory of relativity, the interpretation was that these objects do not fall. According to Einstein, these objects at Earth just freely move in a curved space-time, and this curvature induced by the mass and energy are the reason for the gravity. But Patnaban introduced another great idea. Gravity is an emergent phenomena. And if I quote from his own words, Patnaban says that I have come up with a new perspective in which the field equations of gravity have the same status as those in emergent phenomena like fluid mechanics or elasticity. What is more, standard classical gravity seems to contain sufficient internal evidence to support this point of view. There have been people from the quantum theory, and Patnaban says that he has put forward many ideas, and I am again quoting him, I have been developing ideas which will survive this eventuality. His ideas will survive, and I'm sure that his students and colleagues will take his ideas further, and we will see that the third revolution on gravity as proposed by the Professor Tanu Patnaban. We have lost one of the best scholars, a theoretical physicist, above all a great teacher. I bow my head before this great physicist and wish friends and family to have strength to adapt with the situation. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for your scholarly speech as well as sharing your memories with Professor Tanu Patmanaban. It is very informative to the audience. Now we will move on to the lecture. Today we have with us an eminent scientist of the country, Dr. Anil Bharadwaj. Before he takes over, may I request Dr. Anil Kumar to introduce the chief guest, please. Anil Kumar. Please unmute. Please unmute.
Is slightly poor.
Anil, please unmute.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Anil Bharadwaj is an eminent astrophysicist and currently the director of Physical Research Laboratory, ISRO Ahmedabad. Dr. Bharadwaj received his BSc and MSc in Physics from Lucknow University. He did PhD in Planetary and Space Science from the Institute of Technology, Banaras Hindu University. He joined the ISRO as a scientist at VSSC Thiruvananthapuram. He has worked at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, USA during 2004-05 as NRC NAS Senior Research Associate. In 2014, he became the director of the Space Physics Laboratory of VSSC in Thiruvananthapuram. Since February 2017, he is the director of Physical Research Laboratory in Ahmedabad. His research activities are in the areas of planetary atmospheres, ionospheres, and surfaces, and their interaction and coupling with solar radiation, solar wind, and planetary magnetospheres. Dr. Bharadwaj has received many awards and honors, including Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, Fellowship Grant from the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, ISRO Team Achievement Award for Chandrayaan-1, INSA Vainabapu Memorial Award, Infosys Prize. Dr. Bharadwaj is an elected fellow of Indian National Science Academy, Indian Academy of Sciences, National Academy of Sciences of India. He is also an elected member of the International Academy of Astronautics and International Astronomical Union. He has more than 130 research publications to his credit, and has also written and edited many books. Once again, I welcome you, sir, to this commemorative lecture session.
Thank you, Dr. Anil. May I request now Dr. Anil Bharadwaj, please. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, Shri Dattanji, Professor Jayaraj, Dr. Anil Kumar, Dr. Unikrishnan, Dr. Ajit Prabhu, and all the colleagues who have joined live and listening to this program. Namaskar, good afternoon. My Shraddhanjali to Professor Thanu Padmanabhan, a great physicist, a cosmologist, and an astrophysicist of high rank, and one among the few in the country who have taken the field of cosmology and astrophysics to such a height. He left us for heavenly abode very young, at the age of 64, and has left a great legacy in the field of physics, and more particularly in the field of astrophysics. He has written so many books, very basics as well as highly advanced books. Books written for reading, just to understand the basics physics, as well as to go into advanced courses and PhD levels. I had met Paddy, we used to call him Paddy for his nickname, and it was very stimulating and exciting sessions whenever I used to meet him. On occasions when we have met in conferences or at evening teas or dinners during conferences, I had an occasion to discuss certain aspects of astrophysics. And the insight which he was able to provide through his understanding and his extrapolation of the ideas was really enriching. I really thank the Kerala Science Council of Science, Kerala State Council of Science, Technology and Environment for organizing this tribute to Paddy in form of a commemorative webinar series starting on 27th of September. And I also thank the University of Kerala, Mahatma Gandhi University, University of Calicut, and Cochin University of Science and Technology in joining in organizing this great event. I would like to present my lecture by sharing the slides. Let me try to do that. And please tell me if you are able to see it.
Yeah, yes. Can you put it in full screen mode, sir?
Yeah, I'm just trying to do that. Are you able to see it now?
It is not moving, sir.
Okay. What are you able to see the first slide, which is tribute to Tanu Padmanabhan?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Is it moving now?
It is not going to the full screen mode.
Is it not going to full screen mode? Okay. How about now?
No change.
Are you able to see a slide of PRL?
No.
Sir,
That
the
left
bottom
left
there is
side
actually full screen button. Bottom. Where you are just below. Your cursor is moving. The
Okay.
third one in that row. Just below, sir. On that bar.
Is it okay now?
Just before that 60% you are seeing, no? That
Yeah.
side, the first one. That
Okay,
one is
let me see. Okay, you are able to do this.
Okay, now
One
it's,
moment.
no, it's
One
moving.
moment.
Yeah.
I will stop sharing and I will do the other way. Sometimes there are issues. One moment, please. Okay, now let me see. Are you able to see it now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Proceeds.
And it's full screen, right?
Yeah, it is coming as a welcome to PRL, that slide.
Right. Okay,
Yes.
good. So what I was trying to do today is to give you little bit glimpses of the Physical Science Laboratory, which is celebrating its Platinum Jubilee this year, along with our celebration of independence 75 years. And as we all know that PRL is called as the cradle of space science in India, and rightly so, because it was established 75 years back by none other than the father of Indian space program, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. So this year is the 75 years of PRL, and we are celebrating its Platinum Jubilee. And we also dedicate this talk to Paddy as well as to Sarabhai ji, whose birth centenary we celebrated a year back in the 2019. To do this celebration, we have started a Vyakhyan series, which we call as PRL Kamrit Vyakhyan. Started on 4th of August of this year. And this is a 75 episodes of Vyakhyans, or essentially colloquium, being delivered by renowned scientists, engineers, technocrats, social workers, as well as people from arts and literature. And this is one of the way that we are celebrating India's independence, 75 years of independence, as well as the Platinum Jubilee of PRL. So all of those who are interested can watch this Vyakhyan every Wednesday at 4 p.m. at the YouTube channel of PRL. PRL, as we all know, was established in the year 1947 by Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, and it all started from his home, which we call as retreat, in the year 1947. And you may be able to see this small house at the bottom left, which is called the retreat, where the PRL actually started. And in the 1948, it moved to MG Science College here in Ahmedabad. And the first council meeting happened in 1950, where you can see the gentleman standing is none other than Professor S.S. Bhatnagar. And in 1951, the first ozone measurements started in Mount Abu as an outstation of PRL. So formally, PRL got established on 11th of November of 1947. And its foundation stone in the year 1952 for the building was laid by the guru of Dr. Sarabhai, that is C.V. Raman. And in 2 years, the building got ready and was inaugurated in the year 1954 by then Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Subsequently, this building was further expanded and a multi-story, 8-story building came up at the behind of this PRL. Later on, as the activities expanded, PRL got a second campus in Ahmedabad, which we called as Thaltej campus. And PRL started its activities of observations using telescopes from Mount Abu in the year 1979. And in the year 1981, Udaipur Solar Observatory, which is existing in Udaipur, and in the middle of this Fateh Sagar Lake, was becoming a part of PRL. Are you able to see the slides and it is moving?
Yes,
Can
yes,
anybody-
perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. So if you look at the logo of PRL, you will see the sign of sun, which is basically circle and a dot in the center. And then the earth, which is basically a circle and cross. And both this earth and sun are encircled with a bigger circle, which you see in the outer part. And then there are two other semicircles kind of thing engulfing these two. If you look at this logo of PRL and translate to what it says PRL research encompasses the earth, the sun, immersed in the fields and radiations reaching from and to infinity, all that man's curiosity and intellect can reveal. So that is how the logo of PRL has come. And in the bottom, you are seeing the 4 campuses of PRL, the main campus and Thaltej campus in Ahmedabad, the Udaipur Solar Observatory in the middle of the lake, and the Mount Abu telescope facility. The areas of research currently in PRL are in the domain of astronomy astrophysics, and that is how we are all linked to the activities of Thanu Padmanabhan. The solar physics, space and atmosphere sciences, atomic, molecular and optical physics, theoretical physics, geosciences, and planetary sciences. So there are 7 major disciplines of research being conducted in PRL, and it has a very strong group of students and postdoctoral students who are working with the faculties and scientists in PRL, essentially pursuing internationally competitive research. Let me also a little bit brief you about the contribution of PRLs to national building. And as you can recognize some of the faces like Professor U.R. Rao, alumni of PRL, did his PhD with Professor Sarabhai, and subsequently was a professor at PRL, and later on moved to Bangalore to start the satellite program. Professor K. Kasturirangan, you must have been knowing very well, who was a former Secretary Department of Space and Chairman ISRO, is an alumni. He did his PhD in the year 1960s. Professor APJ Abdul Kalam was working in PRL, and on the suggestion of Professor Sarabhai, he moved to Trivandrum in Thumba to start the rocketry. Professor B.N. Goswami, Professor R.N. Krishnamurthy, Professor R. Sridharan, Dr. A. Jayaraman, Dr. D. Bora, they are all directors of various research institutes in India. So essentially what I'm trying to communicate is that PRL has contributed greatly to the national building. Now let me come to the topic of planetary science, astrophysics, astronomy, and space sciences. And I would like to give you a very brief overview of the research activities in terms of what we are doing. But starting with the basics, that when we talk about the planetary sciences in India and talk about the solar system in particular, we look at this figure where we show various planets in our solar system. The 4 inner planets, which is basically Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, which is much smaller in size. And then the 4 giant planets or big planets, which is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And then we have the last one, which is Pluto, which is much smaller in size. So if somebody wants to remember this order of the planet in a solar system, it is easy to do that by telling that my very excellent mother just sent us 9 pizzas, or essentially Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. But now we all know that Pluto is not considered as a classical planet. It is considered as a dwarf planet. And therefore, this rhyme has to change. The rhyme changes to my very excellent mother just send us noodles. So 9 pizzas has been translated to noodles. This is only just to give you a feel of how to remember the planets in our solar system in the order of their distances from the sun. But if you compare the terrestrial planets, that is basically Earth, Venus, Mars, and Mercury, you will say that Earth and Mars are almost same in size. Mercury is roughly half, and Mars is roughly half, and Mercury is 1/3. But if you compare this with the outer planets or the giant planets, you will say that Earth is almost like 5th largest, and almost like 10 or 11 Earth can fit inside the Jupiter. But if you compare all this with respect to Sun, you will really say that Earth is very, very small compared to Sun itself, which is one of the stars of millions and billions of stars in the whole universe. And on this Earth, now you can imagine where you are. So we are really very, very small. Now coming to the solar system, which we now call as new solar system, essentially because Pluto is not considered as a classical planet, it is considered as a dwarf planet. And beyond Pluto also, we have many planets which have been discovered now, including Hume, Makemake, and Eris. So we have 8 classical planets, 4 inner planets, and 4 outer planets. In addition to this, we have asteroids, which go around the sun, and comets, which are also very interesting objects. And if you talk about asteroids, you must be aware that there's an asteroid belt, which is between the orbit of Mars and Jupiter, which consists of very large number of asteroids. And those which come very close to the Earth, we call as near-Earth asteroids, because they can be really dangerous for human habitat on the planet. The largest of these asteroids is Ceres, which is about 1,000 kilometers in diameter, and which is accounting for almost 1/3 of the mass of the whole asteroids. Similarly, there are asteroids which are much smaller in sizes. For example, you see here Ida, but even asteroids have their own satellites. For example, here the Dactyl is a satellite which is going around, or natural satellite which is going around a small body called Ida. Talking about the comets, comets are also very interesting objects, very small in size, few kilometers to few tens of kilometers size of the nucleus, but they grow in huge dimensions of millions of kilometers because of their very long tail. And as the comet comes into the inner part of our solar system, this coma gets developed essentially because of the sublimation of the water on the comets. So comets are considered as messenger of life because they are both cosmologically and cosmogonically important. One of our ways to understand how the water came on the planet Earth, it is suggested that it could be the comets which could have delivered water on the planet Earth. Now let us come back to the planets and look at some of the properties to look at their comparative planetology. So we all know the planet Earth much better. Earth goes around its axis or spin on its axis with 23.5 degree tilt. So it is essentially going around the sun in its axis, which is tilted by 23.5 degree. If you compare this with respect to other planets in a solar system, you will see that Earth is 23.5, Mars is almost similar, 25 degrees, Saturn is also similar, Jupiter is almost vertical, the biggest planet, Mercury is absolutely vertical, but Venus is 177 degrees. Essentially, it is rotating reverse. It is almost vertical, but it is a retrograde rotation. And look at this planet Uranus, which is having its pole along its axis or along its what we call plane of revolution around the sun, or even the planet like Pluto. So there are planets in our solar system which have very large tilt like Uranus. If you look at the length of the day and try to see how it behaves for different planets, you will see that Earth is 1 day or 24 hours, you can say. Mars is almost similar, slightly longer than 24 hours. Jupiter, Saturn have much smaller length of the day. Jupiter is almost like 10 hours, Saturn is about 11 hours. So a huge planet rotating on its axis, completing in 10 hours. And you go on the other side, Venus. It is taking 243 Earth days. Because Venus is rotating very, very slow. Mercury, about 60 days. So these are the planets which are rotating very slow on its axis. But on the other side, there are planets which are rotating much faster on its axis. Similarly, if you look at the density of the planets, you can say that Earth is the densest planet in our solar system, with a density of about 5.5. Mercury, Venus are almost similar to that values, which is that of the Earth. But if you go to the outer part of solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, they are much lighter. And Saturn is in fact the lightest. It has a density less than 1, which is the density of the water. So Saturn can actually float on water. Now talking about the atmosphere of different planets in our solar system, and we talk about Earth, which is dominated by nitrogen and oxygen. We say about 78% nitrogen, about 20% oxygen or so. And then there are minor gases as well as trace gases. But N2 dominated atmosphere exists not only in the Earth, but also on Pluto and Titan. Titan is a satellite of Saturn, one of the largest satellites of Saturn and the second largest in our solar system. But if you go to outer part of solar system, it is dominated by hydrogen and helium. So outer part is dominated by hydrogen and helium. As you come inside, Earth dominated by nitrogen, but Venus and Mars are dominated by carbon dioxide. So on both sides of the Earth, that is Venus, which is in inner part of the Earth, and Mars, which is in outer part compared to Earth, are dominated by carbon dioxide. So now you can see the variabilities of various planets in our solar system and how different and how similar they are. Now talking a little bit about the sun, which is also very important because sun is the head of our solar system, and it is the sun which provides all heat and light for survival of the humans on the planet Earth. This is a picture which is a false color image of the sun, because sun doesn't look like this in the visible light, right? Here you see the sun in the ultraviolet, but the sun looks pale in white light, which you see over here. It looks very different in infrared or in microwave, but during eclipse, one can see the neighborhood of the sun, which we call as corona. Corona is essentially a region around the sun, which is million times or million degrees Kelvin. It is hotter or hottest region, you can say, of the sun. How a corona, which is in the outer part of the sun, is having a higher temperature when the photosphere or the surface of the sun is having 6,000 Kelvin is still a paradox. and we are still working to understand it. The sun looks very different when you want to look at it in X-rays or in extreme ultraviolet or ultraviolet. And this is how you say the sun looks like, very violent in X-rays or ultraviolet. In addition to how the sun looks like, we should also understand what the sun is emitting. The sun emits electromagnetic radiation, which starts from gamma rays to X-rays to ultraviolet to visible to infrared to microwave to radio waves. So the sun is emitting all the radiations. But the total amount of the radiation, which we call as the total radiation dose, is almost constant. And we call it as a solar constant, whose values is about 1360 watts per meter square. So essentially, the sun, which we look at every day in the daytime, doesn't change. But if you look at the emissions from the sun in X-rays or ultraviolet, it changes drastically as a function of activity which is happening on the sun. And that is why there are events which happens on the sun like solar flares and CMEs, and which are very important. And I'll show you if it works fine on the movie. In addition to electromagnetic radiation, the sun continuously emits a wind, which is called a solar wind. These are stream of charged particles which keeps continuously coming out of the sun 24/7 with the velocities which could vary something like 300, 400, 500 km per second. So essentially, these are supersonic flow of plasma, which is essentially protons, and a few percent of doubly ionized helium or alpha particles keeps coming continuously out of the sun. And they interact with various planets in the solar system, causing different phenomena. So if you look at the solar flares, I don't know whether you can see the movie. Are you able to see this movie which is running?
Yes, yes.
So this is an event which is called solar flare. This is an actual movie recorded by space-based telescope. And that shows how the sun looks like and how violent the sun can be during solar flares. And you can actually see the loops of magnetic fields, and the plasma moving on that. And there are a lot of sparks which is happening, which are seeing, which is basically solar flares. So this is a time of Halloween of November 2003 or 2003, when the sun was very, very active, and there were a lot of activities which is happening in the sun, and that's how this movie was made. And many of these activities which is happening in the sun give rise to very high energy charged particles, which we call as solar energetic particles. And they have a velocity which is highly realistic, and they can reach the Earth within few tens of minutes. Similar to this, we have an activity on the sun which is called a coronal mass ejection. Corona, basically outer part of the sun, taking mass out of the sun, we call it as coronal mass ejection. And what you're seeing over here is these CMEs or coronal mass ejections happening on the sun. And we are able to see that because we are blocking the sun. So if you block the sun only, you are able to see our surroundings, because otherwise the sun is so bright. And in the bottom side, you are seeing also a comet, which is moving in the sky, and few planets in the top right one. So these are basically the information which has come out from space-based telescope about the activities which is happening in the sun. And this sun, when this activities happens on the sun, particularly the CMEs or coronal mass ejections or flares, they emit these which can move towards the planet Earth and cause auroras. Auroras basically brightening of polar regions in form of light. So this is one of the CMEs which has happened just now. This is just an animation to make you understand how the activities happens in terms of sun-earth connection. Just coming close, it sees the magnetic field of the Earth, goes around and then comes towards the polar regions. So that is why the polar regions of the planet Earth gets brightened, which is called as aurora. I will go to the planetary missions of India and just try to brief you about how things are happening in terms of exploration. We all must have heard about Chandrayaan-1 mission, which was launched on 22nd of October 2008 and arrived on Moon on 8th November 2008. just after 16 days. And this mission has 11 experiments on board, and 3 of these experiments were being flown for the first time for remote probing of a planetary body. And it was truly an international mission because there were 10 countries which were participating. And if you look at this spacecraft, it looks to be very busy because it has 11 experiments on board. And many of them is facing on the one side of the spacecraft because they are all interested to look at the moon. You can see it's much better, which shows all the payloads in a short form. And on the top, you are able to see the Moon Impact Probe, which is basically a small or microsatellite, which was released from the Chandrayaan-1 to land onto the moon surface in the polar regions, exactly at the location where it was designated to land. I was involved in this mission in the experiment called SARA, which stands for Sub-Heavy Atom Reflecting Analyzer. And this mission or this experiment has really brought tremendous change in our understanding of how the solar wind interacts with the moon. There are many science results which have come out from the Chandrayaan-1 mission, more than 180 scientific publications. But of course, the most important is the discovery of water on the moon. Till that time, we are all thinking the moon is bone dry, but now we know that moon contains water, and ample amount of water present on the moon in the polar regions. In addition to this, of course, we have seen water presence in the exosphere of the moon. We have validated the lunar magma hypothesis. We have discovered mini magnetosphere on the moon. We have discovered many volcanic vents, which in turn suggest that the volcanoes on the moon have been active in very recent time scales in terms of 100 million years or even 10 million years on a geological time scales, and many rallies which could be because of the lava flow, which in turn could be used for habitat when humans start thinking about habitating the moon. These significantly large publications have produced very interesting science results, and some of them have actually come on the cover pages of the scientific journals, like for example Science, which is of course very well known, or Geophysical Research Letter, which is published by American Geophysical Union. So Chandrayaan-1 has actually transformed our understanding about the moon. This is a view which I like very much, which was obtained by the Chandrayaan-1 mission, particularly the terrain mapping camera, on 22nd of July of 2009, when there was an eclipse. It was a lunar eclipse, and we were interested to see the shadow of the moon falling on the planet. If you want to look at how the surface of the moon looks like, let me see if this one may plays over here. Are you able to see this movie?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, great. So you can see how the surface of the moon looks like from the Chandrayaan-1 mission. And all these spots which are seeing are basically craters. The moon is full of craters of all possible dimensions, small craters of centimeters to meters to kilometers to tens to hundreds to thousands of kilometers size. And you will see craters inside craters inside craters. So there are craters of all possible dimensions present on the moon, as well as the topology and morphology and mineralogy and the composition of the moon surface, which keeps changing from place to place. So it's very interesting for us to understand the moon in much more detail, and that is why we have mission the Chandrayaan-2, which I'm going to talk later. But let me take you to Mars, and we call that Indian Mom to Mars. The mom here stands for not mother, but it stands for Mars Orbiter Mission. And this mission has been a real technological feat for India, because this mission launched on 5th of November of 2013, arriving on Mars on September 24th, 2014, has been working around Mars for last 7 years. It was having a planned life of 6 months. It has surpassed it by more than a factor of 10. And it is still going around the Mars. So we have our Mangalyaan, or Mars Orbiter Mission, is still working around Mars. It has 5 experiments on board, And if you look at how this whole mission took place, when we launched on 5th of November of the year 2013, we are all going around the Earth to gain velocity so that we can escape the Mother Earth. And on the 1st of December of that year, we actually started moving away from the planet Earth. And we started moving away and going into an orbit so that we can have a rendezvous with Mars. And it happened on 24th of September of the year 2014, when we got captured around Mars. And since then, we are orbiting the planet Mars. As I mentioned, there are 5 experiments on board, and the total mass of this 5 experiment is only 13 kg, whereas the total mass of the whole spacecraft is 1300 kg. We have a Mars color camera, methane sensor for Mars, thermal infrared imaging spectrometer, Lyman alpha photometer, and MENCA, which stands for Mars Exospheric Neutrino Cushion Laser. And this is the last experiment where I was the principal scientist when I was there at VSS in Trivandrum. And very significant results have come out. Some of them, which I'm showing you over here, like full disk images of the Mars. This is not possible otherwise because of a very unique geometry of the orbit of the Mangalyaan, that we are able to take the full disk images of the Mars. And you can see how the Mars changes as a function of season. You can see the North and South Pole ices, which is basically white in color. Or there are many science results which have come out from the MENCA experiment talking about the evening time exosphere, how the densities varies as a function of altitude, which in fact made this ISRO story of the week and was captured by many news medias. Essentially, what we showed was that how a CO2 dominated atmosphere changes to oxygen dominated atmosphere. And where does this change happens, particularly in the evening time? It is somewhere around 250 or 260 kilometers above the surface of the Mars that the CO2 dominated atmosphere becomes O dominated. We also found, or in fact discovered, suprathermal argon. That is argon which have little higher temperatures. And the importance comes is that if you have any atomic or molecular species which are slightly higher temperatures in the exosphere, which is a region where the collisions doesn't take place between the species, they can simply escape. So this has large implications for constraining the models of the atmospheric escape. If you have any suprathermal atom which has a slightly higher temperature, which in turn means more energy, it can easily escape. We also got glimpses about the 2 moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos. Here I'm showing you the picture of Phobos or Deimos, which is even smaller one than the Phobos. And that also was possible because of a highly elliptical orbit of the MOM around the Mars. And after the success of this mission of getting inserted on 24th of September in the year 2014, one of my friends from US sent me this picture and says that the MOM has become so famous that it has come on the Cope night. And in fact, the Google, a month later, celebrated the Mangalyaan's success by a doodle, as well as the Amul, it came out with this logo, with this caption of ISRO's cow, Amul, ye cheez badi hai mast Mars. And the images of, or the pictures, or the photographs, or the data which has been taken from the Mars orbiter mission has come on the cover page of National Geographic, you can see here, and has come on many other magazines and channels. And Government of India, realizing the technological feat which India achieved, because India is the first country in the world to have a successful insertion of an orbiter around the Mars in the first attempt. And that is why you see the picture of Mangalyaan at the back of the 2000 rupees note. I hope most of you must have already noticed it. Chandrayaan 2 mission is much more complex and complicated than Chandrayaan 1 mission, which consists of not only the orbiter, but also the lander and the rover. We all know that we got inserted into the orbit around the moon, and we had a landing happening on 7th of September of year 2019. and we all know what happened. The orbiter is working very well around the moon. It is providing excellent quality data, which is providing us information about the moon, about the topography of the moon, about the morphology, the mineralogy, the composition, not only just at the surface, but beneath the surface also, including informations in the polar regions. And this is just a picture to tell you about the image of the Sarabhai crater. The Vikram Sarabhai has a crater named after him, which is on the near side of the moon, so on the side which we can see from the planet Earth itself. And this crater is about 8 kilometers in diameter, and it has a depth of about 1.7 kilometers. And one can really see this crater in the night sky, particularly if you have small telescopes. So this is one of the images of the Sarabhai crater. And this Chandrayaan-2 has an OHRC, which stands for Optical High Resolution Camera. And this can provide you objects of dimensions of almost like sub-meter on the moon surface. You can see small craters seen over in these pictures, which are having dimensions of about a meter or so. So this is a very high resolution camera, which is providing us unprecedented information about the morphology and the craters on the moon. And there is an instrument which has been developed in PRL called Solar X-ray Monitor, which is essentially looking at the X-rays which is coming from the sun and falling onto the moon. And this is the first instrument of its kind, because it is providing the highest energy resolution, or basically spectrum, of the X-rays coming out of the sun in the energy range of 1 to 15 kV. And because of its unprecedented what you call resolution, as well as the sensitivity, it is able to detect sub-A class flares. So there are a lot of observations which have happened over the last 2 years, and it has shown that there are many sub-class A flares happening, which you call as microflares. And the number of microflares are very large, which in turn suggests that this could be one of the reasons by which corona is heated to million-degree Kelvin. And these results have made stories. They have been published in internationally reputed journals like Astrophysical Journal. It has been made the ISRO Story of the Week and has been captured by media, like not only in India, but also outside India. What next? What we are planning to do is to have a mission to Sun, which we call as Aditya L1. And this is a mission to study the Sun in much more detail, where we are looking at not only emissions coming out of the Sun in terms of photons in ultraviolet, visible, and X-rays, but also the charged particles which is coming out of the Sun, which I was telling you, the solar wind which is coming out from the Sun all the time. And we have 7 experiments on this mission, and they'll be looking at the photons in ultraviolet, visible, and X-rays, and charged particles, particularly protons and WNS heliums, in the energy range starting from something like tens of EVs going to almost like tens of MeVs. And where we are going to put this mission, we are going to put this at L1 point. Now, L1 point is the point between Sun and Earth, which is almost like 99% away from the Sun on a line joining Sun and Earth. So the beauty of this point is that this L1 point goes around the Sun as the Earth is going around the Sun. So it is always ahead of the Sun, moving as the Earth is going around the Sun. So one can have a completely uninterrupted view of the Sun continuously 24/7. And secondly, any activity happening on the Sun and the radiation coming out of the Sun will be first seen at L1 point. And therefore, it becomes a space warning predictor or warning system for the activity to be happening on the planet Earth. And that's why this mission is very important, and we are all working towards it for developing various experiments, which is going to go next year. In future, we are planning to have a second mission to Mars, and of course, the first mission to Venus. Venus, as I just mentioned in the beginning also, it's a very different planet compared to Mars and Earth. It rotates very slow. It is retrograde, but its surface pressure is almost 100 times that of the Earth, or the temperatures is 800 Kelvin. So you can imagine that it is highly hostile at the surface. But if you move up almost like 50 to 60 kilometers above the surface, you will find the surface and temperatures are almost same as the surface of the planet. Another issue is that because of the high temperature at the surface, there are volcanic activities which are happening, which pumps large amount of CO2, and they react with water to form sulfuric acids. And this whole Venus is completely covered with sulfuric acid clouds. So an altitude of almost like 50 to 70 kilometers, there are clouds which is present of sulfuric acid. And that's why this picture which you're seeing of the Venus is not of the surface. It is basically the clouds, false color image of the Venus. You cannot see the surface of the Venus in the visible light because it's opaque because of the presence of clouds. Secondly, as the Venus is closer to the sun, it receives much more sunlight as well as particle radiations like solar. And therefore, the interaction of the solar radiation and the solar wind with the Venus is drastically different than Earth and Mars. And therefore, it makes a very interesting planet to be studied in more detail. And that's why we are planning to have a mission to Venus. I will end up this by just talking about our observatory at Mount Tabu, and which is at the peak, which we call a Guru Shikhar, which is one of the best in the country in terms of visibility. And moonless nights, it has very bright, or we can say 21 mag objects can be seen. And also, it has very large amount of cloud-free nights, almost like 200 cloud-free nights per year, which provides a very excellent seeing of almost like 1 hour a second. And at this site, using an instrument called PARAS, PRS scientists have discovered the first exoplanet from India. So this is the first exoplanet being discovered from India using our own indigenous instrument called PARAS, which was developed in PRL, and our own telescope at Mount. And this exoplanet has a mass of almost like 27 Earth mass, radius of about 6 Earth radii, and is going around the what you call the parent star in about 20 days. So it's moving very fast going around. And this is, of course, a very important discovery, which has put India in the class of selected countries. And that is why our Prime Minister himself congratulated our scientists, telling that immensely proud of our scientists who have created history by discovering a sub-Saturn sized planet 600 light years away from the Earth. Congratulations to them. This discovery has put India among select countries. So this is one of the aspects where we are now moving from the study of the planets in our solar system to planets in the other solar system. And we are now coming up with another telescope, which is much bigger than the 1.25 meter telescope, which is now 2.5 meter. And this is going to enhance the capability by almost an order of magnitude. And this is going to be operational next year, early next year, which will really enhance our capability to study the exoplanets. So with this, I would like to thank you all for listening to this talk to get a feel of the PRL, the legacy of the PRL, and the history of the PRL, and how PRL is contributing to the planetary exploration program, and what country is doing in terms of the planetary science, planetary missions, and planetary exploration. So thank you all for listening patiently, and I would love to have any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Inspiring also.
I just want to make a comment. I am Unnikrishnan Nair from Kerala University. Can you hear?
Yes, I can hear.
The PRL had 3 units. One at Observatory Trivandrum, Cosmic Ray unit, and then
Yes.
another at Kodaikanal, and
Yes.
another at Gulmarg. long before the starting of the PSSC.
Yes.
I think therefore there was a connection with Trivandrum for the PRL in before 1960.
Right.
If I remember correctly. And
Right.
Dr. Sarabhai used to come here and look at the observations. Just
Right.
only comment.
Yeah, I am aware about that. This was the observatory in this opposite to the Kanakunam Palace, where the observations of cosmic rays used to take place, as well as there was observatory in Kodaikanal and Gulmarg. Gulmarg, of course, because Sarabhaiji's basic research was in cosmic rays, and that's why he wanted to an observatory in the Gulmarg, which is at a much higher altitude, so that he can capture this cosmic rays.
Hello, sir. This is Dr. Mamta from Physics Department, University of Kerala. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Please go
Okay,
ahead.
so it was very nice talk. So actually, yeah, I think I have just one question. Maybe this is not, but I'm just curious to know about that. You showed that solar spectrum. And the X-ray spectrum coming from sun. So physics point of view, what more information you can extract from that?
It is essentially the processes which produces the X-rays on the sun. No, different emissions are produced by different processes, and the way the X-rays are produced on the sun is very different. Essentially, if you look at the solar spectrum, as I was just mentioning, you will see that it doesn't change much in the visible and infrared part. But in the X-rays or in the microwave part, it changes drastically as the activity on the sun changes. But when I say activity, it means the number of sunspots, for example, on the sun, okay, which has a cycle of 11 years. Okay.
Okay, I see.
So the amount of X-rays coming out on the sun can change by several orders of magnitude. Whereas in the visible light, it doesn't change. Absolutely
Yes.
no change. It would be hardly 0.1, 0.01% change. That's why when you look at the sun, you see the same sun every day throughout our life. But if we have, or our eyes would have been sensitive to X-rays, we would have seen the sun in X-rays, and how does it change? Now, this has a direct connection to planet Earth, because these X-rays are the one and the ultraviolet part which produces ionosphere, right? And we know how important the ionosphere is for a planet like Earth.
Yes,
So
that is what actually, yeah. Okay. So exactly the particle information that ionosphere means, it will just give you the structural information also.
Not just the structural information, it provides you a lot of other things, which includes, of course, the variability, the particle densities or electron densities in the ionosphere, its movement along the field lines, across the field lines, and vertically. And of course, if you are in Trivandrum, you must be aware about that there's an electrojet which is flowing right above the Thumba. And that is why Professor Sarabhai was interested to start rocketry right there, because he wanted to study this electrojet phenomena, or the upper atmosphere ionosphere, about this what you called this dip equator or magnetic dip equator.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I ask one question, sir?
Yes.
I'm Ravi Kumar from University of Calicut. Yeah, it's regarding the dates in planets. Do we have any? What are the factors or that decide on the rotation speed or spinning speed of planets, or any heavenly body for that matter?
Okay, good question. Essentially, what happens is that it all depends upon how the planets have evolved. As we all know that the whole solar system starts from the protoplanetary disk, which is basically a disk of the dust and gas moving around. And then you have the formation of the star in the center, and then the left out material forms the planets. And due to conservation of the momentum, these planets have a different rotations. But as the planet revolves, depending upon the size of the planets and push and pull of the planets, their rotation period also keeps changing. Now, for example, in the case of Earth, I will tell you, we all know now that we have satellite called Moon or the Moon, and because of the presence of the Moon and the what you call the rotation of the Moon around the Earth and the Moon moving away, the Earth is slowing down. It is not just the Earth alone, but there are factors which is affecting because of the gravity pull of other bodies. You must be knowing about the tides on Earth, right, which is caused by the Moon, lunar tides, right? So these are the various factors which has to be accounted for, which we call as a part of your orbital dynamics, to understand that what are the bodies which is existing now which will be affecting the rotation rate of a planet. In addition to this, of course, it depends upon whether the body is solid or fluid or liquid, things like that. So there are many factors which can decide.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, any other questions, please? This is the right occasion to interact with a very distinguished scientist of the country, pride of the country. So I think it's a rare moment getting all of us to interact with a great scientist. So kindly have discussions and interactions, maybe 5 minutes more. Am I audible?
Yeah. Can I ask one more question? Do we have any measurements on the to profile the gravity around Moon? Because the Moon is not a solid object, right? I mean, because its density is varying, and it's there is inner fluid motion also, right? So, is there any way we can profile the gravity around when we do this Chandrayaan missions or something like that?
Okay. Let me tell you one thing. Moon is having much more, what I should say, gravitational anomalies. Just 1 minute. Just. So Moon, the way the Moon has been formed, we all know that there was a Mars-sized object which has come and hit the planet Earth, and that's how the Moon got formed. And since it was such a large impact, the Moon must have been in molten condition in the beginning, and that's how the hypothesis of lunar magma hypothesis has come in, that it should have been molten form and then got solidified and things like that, which in turn suggests that the Moon would have much larger gravity anomalies. Gravity anomalies in the sense that some region of the Moon will be having a higher mass compared to that region. And in the Chandrayaan-1 mission, we have seen this with our observations directly, because at the places where the mass is more, it will pull the planet, and where the mass is less, it will just release. So the satellite will have a motion in an orbit around the Moon, which can be 100 kilometers plus minus 10 kilometers or so. It could be 110, 120 kilometers at times, and it could be 90 kilometers. Now, how can you actually measure? This has been done in a mission called GRAIL. It's a mission from NASA, where they flew 2 satellites simultaneously, showing precisely the distance between the two. And as they were moving around around the Moon, they were actually seeing their distances from the Moon. Okay. Now, one of them going up, other one being at the same location, was able to precisely do a kind of mapping, you can say, or tomography kind of thing of the Moon gravity. And that's how we know now the geoids, the whole geoid of the Moon.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So I have a question. I am asking this actually on behalf of many people who are asking me this question. So finding that I can't give a good answer, I am asking you. Probably it may appear to be a layman's question.
Okay.
The question is like this, Elon Musk is actually showing wonders, within a small maybe decade or maybe 10 years, 15 years time. He's even exploring space tourism and many things and sending people to, outer space and all. But India started these space programs over 50 years or 60 years. Even now, we are in the initial stage of such missions. Now, what are the impediments? Why ISRO is not able to do such missions? I hope question is clear to you.
Such missions means here. Such missions mean.
Hello.
Can you just elaborate?
With people traveling and all.
Oh, I see. So we have already undertaken, ISRO and Government of India has already undertaken a mission which you must have heard about, Gaganyaan.
Yeah.
So Gaganyaan is a mission which is essentially for sending humans in space.
Yeah.
But as you all know very well, that space technology is not a simple thing. Yeah, it is very complex technology, and you have to go step by step to master this technology. And I think Datanji is there who can also explain you in more detail, because he has been also involved in this for a very, very long time. And this what you call technology in terms of sending humans to space, you cannot have any errors, or I can say that it's something like 99.999% kind of accuracy has to be there. And that's why it becomes very difficult for you to design and develop systems and subsystems which will keep the humans safe in space. Okay? Not only just that human has to go through a rocket, but it has to be safely returned back also. Okay? It's not a one-way ticket, na? That you have sent it up and then forgotten, right? He has to be brought back safely home. And that is why this technology is much more challenging. But India is developing this, and very soon you will see the first human from India going into space.
Yeah, that is why several questions in that direction. Why a private space agency like SpaceX can do in short time, where other space government instituted agencies are taking too much time.
Anil, shall I add a few?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
On behalf of Anil, because we are together for a long period in ISRO, the question what Ajit has answered, we started in 70s, about the rocketry and things, etc. During 60s, the people started sending probe to Mars.
Correct,
so you can understand, Russia and America, they were sending orbiter to Mars those times in 60s. So how much we were lagging, that is one you can understand. But in the time when we started the space program by the leadership of Sarabhai, going to other planet and making Gaganyaan type of thing was not at all in his heart, and it was not defined at all, because the space program, India's requirement was totally different than other countries, because we are a undeveloped country that time, and we want to make the life of the common people much comfortable, making use of the space technology. For more than 25-30 years, we were working only for that kind of achievements in the space technology, for making the life of common people in various purposes much simpler, stronger, useful for the day-to-day life. Like sending remote sensing satellites, then communication satellites, weather prediction satellites, then the GPS kind of positioning satellites, disaster warning satellites, and this kind of things only we were giving. Science missions we have given low priority, and especially Chandrayaan, Mangalyaan, and even now the Sun mission, what we are going to do, Gaganyaan, etc. For ISRO, it was a low priority job purposely, because those missions are all costly. Ultimately, the same type of people can ask a question to ISRO by sending on Chandrayaan and what the common man gained. We don't have any answer even now. If you ask by sending a satellite to moon or satellite to Mars, what is the gain of the common man? Or, sending tourists, 5 tourists to the Gaganyaan program, to the space lab, etc., what do you earn? No. But unless we also start even a bit late, unless we start, we will be away from the technology. That is why we have started in 2008 in the Chandrayaan program. We started to learn the technology of putting an orbiter to a different planet and etc. So we are in par with them, but with the shortest period, we picked it up. Now, your second question was, how a private fellow could do wonders and miracle. It is not a simple miracle and etc. Please understand, it is a complete NASA technology was lavishly flowing to him. The engineers and the scientists who have retired from NASA and the working people, NASA has spared their manpower, wisdom, technology, etc. lavishly to him. He has not made all the technology all on a sudden with the 24 hours or 365 days. It is impossible. Hard-earned technology by the NASA, they were very lavish and kind enough to provide to him by the technology of the manpower lavishly, so that to reduce the expenditure of the American government. So that was one way, and he was a person who was able to make money and invest on it. And that is why it has come very fast. Our government also is seriously thinking of such a scenario. Instead of pumping more and public money from the government side to ISRO, they are also seriously thinking how to involve the private people into the system by pooling money and investing money from their side, so that the funding from government can be much reduced. You would have read in the newspaper, etc., that is being done.
Yes, sir. Yes,
and
yes.
that private agencies already started searching for all the retired brains of ISRO. Otherwise, they can't do anything. The private agency, like, SpaceX fellow, they can't do anything with the technology. Technology is with intelligence, with the wisdom, with the manpower, trained manpower. They have already started. They are already, the people who were all working in ISRO, and they were worked it, to get the maximum kind of knowledgeable manpower with them, so that they can get a good role in the ISRO programs. That has already been. He can maybe probably after 5 to 10 or 15 years later, we can also see miraculous changes, etc. may happen here. Instead of government alone is doing. That partnership program has already initiated, and in the coming months, we can see it very visible. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Anil. Any other questions, please? So I think we can move to the concluding part. So Dr. Anil Bharadwaj, a renowned scientist of the country, he has given us an overview about PRL, and right from its inception. And it was very exciting to see Sir C.V. Raman laying the foundation stone. That photograph, that is a very, very rare photograph. And I think it is very inspiring and exciting to all of us to see that. And also he talked about overview. He gave an overview of planetary system, space sciences, etc. Very interesting facts about the sun and planets. Some of them are very new even. Then missions of India, he talked about in details of MOM orbiter mission, Mangalyaan, then Chandrayaan, then even Aditya mission, how the trajectory is going to be, and what is the significance of L1, L2, etc. and also ended his talk by giving a narration about Mount Abu Observatory and the latest telescope and observatories coming under PRL, under ISRO. So thank you, sir, and move on to final vote of thanks. But before that, maybe Dr. Harinarayanan, who is a co-convener of this whole week-long program, maybe have some announcements. Dr. Hari.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good afternoon. Today is the 4th day and tomorrow will be the last day of the webinar series. Tomorrow we'll be having Dr. Dawood Kotawala from Department of Physics, IIT Madras, as a keynote speaker who will be delivering the commemorative lecture. Dr. Dawood Kotawala is also a PhD student of Professor Thanu Padmanabhan. And we'll be having other guests, Sri MC Dattan, the former director of VSSC, and who is the present mentor of science, Government of Kerala. And tomorrow's function will be presided by Dr. VP Mahadevan Pilla, the Vice Chancellor of University of Kerala, and Professor KP Sudhir, the Executive Vice President and Principal Secretary, Science and Technology, Government of Kerala, will also be present tomorrow, along with Dr. S. Pradeep Kumar, the Member Secretary, and Dr. CBKS, the Head of the Department of Physics. And I welcome all to the function tomorrow, the day 5th and the last day. And the link for the webinar will be the same link which we have used for the last 4 days. So over to Ajit Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Harinarayanan. Now, may I request Dr. C.D. Ravikumar, Professor and Head of Department of Physics, University of Calicut, to propose formal vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. We have come to the end of an exciting talk by Dr. Anil Bharadwaj, Director, Physical Research Laboratory, Ahmedabad, on the 4th day of our commemorative webinar series to pay our respect and homage to Professor Thanu Padmanabhan, fondly known as Paddy among researchers worldwide. It's worth noting that we needed over 100 years to see many predictions by Einstein come true. The void that created by the sudden demise of Dr. Padmanabhan is certainly huge, and probably we may realize the gravity of our loss after, say, around another 50 years or so, when technology catches up to verify many of Padmanabhan's claims. The genius of Padmanabhan is so large, so huge. I mean, the loss is so great. In this context, KSCST decided to conduct a webinar series, which in turn heralds the successes of Padma Shri Dr. Thanu Padmanabhan. Coming to my duty, I am privileged here to express our gratitude to Professor M.K. Jairaj, Vice Chancellor, for his kind presidential address detailing the achievements of Professor Padmanabhan. I too feel lucky to have attended many lectures and classes by him. He was instrumental in bringing up an astronomy community in Kerala through his active role in establishing IUCAA. We are overwhelmed by the wonderful presentation describing the solar system in detail, and I take this opportunity to extend a big thank you from the depths of my heart to Dr. Anil Bharadwaj, Director PRL, on behalf of everybody present here. He has not only given glimpses of his connection with Padmanabhan, he gave very beautiful description of the activities and achievements of PRL and the prospects that we can wait from the laboratories in PRL and ISRO. Thank you, Dr. Anil Bharadwaj, for your time here. It's worth noting that KSCST KSCST decided to conduct the webinar series. I wholeheartedly congratulate and thank everyone at KSCST, like Dr. Ajit Prabhu, Dr. E.S. Anil Kumar, Dr. P. Harinarayan, and Dr. M.C. Dattan, as they have rightly decided to celebrate the success of Professor Padmanabhan. I'm sorry if I missed any names. I know this webinar is attended by many eminent persons, including scientists and teachers. Thank you all for your presence here. Finally, the success of a program is decided by the participation, and it's my pleasure to thank every one of you for attending and actively participating in the webinar. Once again, I place on record our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one present here. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi Kumar. Once again, thank you, Dr. Anil Bharadwaj, on behalf of Kerala State Science and Technology Council, on behalf of all the universities, and also on behalf of Government of Kerala. A big thank you. And also I acknowledge that you have accepted our invitation over a single phone call without saying anything. You readily accepted. So my personal behalf also, I thank you.
Thank you everyone. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to pay tribute to our great physicists and cosmologists.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we are concluding today, and let us all assemble tomorrow at 3 p.m. in the same link. Thank you all.
Dr. Jayaraman is there. Just gone away. Okay.